We'd like to welcome everybody to, I think this is week 3 of our 10-week QMH class for qualified mental health specialists. And we were just having a conversation prior to us recording and just talking about looking at what we've talked about prior to it. So one of the things that we've gone over the suspected abuse reporting obligations. We've gone over professional boundaries, right? That's what we've talked about. Let me see, what was this QAC code? OAC code 5122 in terms of the state of Ohio, what they expect from us. The essential services of the behavioral health provider, offering, diagnostic assessment, counseling, case management, and crisis intervention, those kind of things. And then also integration of services. And then we also talked about the emphasis on regulatory compliance, so that we ensure that all of us as providers maintain a consistent standard of care. Okay. Today, we want to talk about, I want to have a conversation, and we're going to do this a little different, where we're going to have our homework is going to be done in class. So we'll be able to talk about it, and you guys will be able to refer to that. So this one is called innovative. Hold on. So again, we've been talking about the regulatory environment, but now we want to shift gears and start talking about how do we actually go about taking care of our clients, right? How do we actually go about providing care for our clients? So there is, we're going to go through this video here, and then I'll stop it in some places and we'll be able to kind of pick it up from there. So hold on. Welcome everybody. You know what? I always do this part wrong. I always like to get right into it. Welcome everybody. I know I forgot my icebreaker. I forgot all of that. I just like to get right into it. Just let's get going. My name is Mr. Peterson. People call me Will. People call me William sometimes. People call me referee. People say horrible call, you suck. I've heard those before too. I enjoy refereeing because I get to be the ultimate dictator for 2 hours and 30 minutes a game. I enjoy getting the chance to run around and talk junk for a little bit and then stay close to the game. That's my 2-minute commercial today.
I want to go today. I want to go next. I want to say happy Black History Month to everybody. And I want us to give ourselves a hug and celebrate our ethnicity, our Blackness, and I love my Black job.
Can you still say that? Can you still say that? I don't know. Yes, you can. You can say that. This is a safe space. Absolutely. Absolutely. It is February the 3rd, February the 4th, man. Yep. Who else?
I'll go next. Toya Hardy. Yeah, happy Black History Month. And I'm just glad to be here. I'm just in a state of just watching everything happen right now. So, but I'm happy to be here. I'm happy for my Black job. I'm happy for this Black company. That's it.
I'll go next. Mike Sanders. I'll say happy Black History Month as well. I'm grateful to work with kids and be a positive influence every day. And I look forward to this year doing more and doing better.
That's good.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, it's on you. So what you gonna do?
Guess I'll fall in line. Happy Black History Month as a historian of Black history and a /author I'll be the killjoy. It's kind of still to me a insult, just to have the shortest month. We've all heard that narrative, but I would just encourage us, like I would say, happy Black History Life. Even with what we're doing here, like we're making our own stories. From the entrepreneur standpoint and so on and so forth. So I would encourage everyone to take a look at something, no matter, no matter what your area of interest may be, just to take a quick research on Google about anything that you're interested in pre-colonization, and not just the American part, but the part, the things that we accomplished before colonization that are, kind of put in a box of, oh, they weren't doing anything until they met us, when in fact, everything, there's nothing new under the sun, because of the gifts that we've been given as a people. So definitely happy Black History Month. And again, I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be in this space with other like-minded people. Obviously, I like to motivate. I'm here to expand my tool belt, and my expectations are to have my tool belt expanded by sharing and receiving knowledge from you all.
I'm gonna start to say like to expand my tool purse. I'm gonna use that.
All right.
I like that.
I love it when we get to this part of the course, because the beginning part is just more lecture. Like, this is what the state says. You got to know this. You got to know about mandated reporting. You got to know about professional boundaries. You got to know about these things, so we can kind of check the boxes, so to speak. But now we kind of get into where the rubber meets the road, and what this field allows us to do, because I think because I had the opportunity of knowing all of us, everybody on the call. I have that benefit. Now, as we get bigger, there may be some folks that I don't know prior to, but I do know a common thread that runs amongst all of us is that at the heart of, we like to help people. We really like to help people. If money wasn't an issue, we would still be doing some form of helping people. So that's pretty cool. The other part about with what we're doing now is, in terms of the tool belt and the tool purse, is providing us with a credential that will allow us to help people and get paid a decent wage for doing it. And so there are some, so we have a natural ability. We have a natural ability. We have raw talent. And so today, as we go forward, though, some of the things that we're going to be talking about today will give us a little bit more of technical skills. So yeah, we can jump out of the gym, but we're going to now start teaching us how to dribble, teaching us how to throw a perfect pass, teaching us how to block properly, and all the other sports analogies. You guys get it. So one of the things, if you haven't done so, I would just get some kind of a journal, right? I use our GPS and success journal. It's just a journal. I mean, it's nothing special except for the GPS. It is goals, plans, action steps. You can get your copy, $25.99, $10.99 on Amazon. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding, but I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be that journal. But get a journal, because a lot of the things now that we're going to be talking about, you're going to just be collecting information. Miss Toya, if I may, can I use you as an example? So Miss Toya you are a case manager at Homeful, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the resource type skills that you have to have as being a case manager working with clients?
Homeful specifically helps homelessness at all aspects of it. And the beginning stage, they work in the shelter, and the skills we need is put their approach is getting you housed is the first step. Even if you need like rehab or you need to find a job, they feel like you be stable once you get housed, and then everything else can fall into place. But along with them getting you housed, they do help you if you need treatment. They help you if you need to get your GED. So they treat like the whole person, even though their main goal is to get you housed. Because once you housed, they feel like you're stable. Is that what you're talking about? Stuff like that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
That
then
is-
once you get housed, they do case management as far as keeping you housed and keeping you stable, keeping you
And
sober.
so that comes right on is what we're going to talk about today is um, asset-based management. This is where kind of the rubber meets the road on some things. So we're going to go ahead and go through this. I think this segment is about 20 minutes. We're going to kind of break it up and come back and talk about it in between, ask some questions, kind of talk about how we might systemize this for what we do in our groups. And then we'll kind of take it from there. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
About maintaining asset-based people at high risk and articulating the risk. So in this part of the talk, I'm going to talk more about the articulation to the individual than the use of the tools to find them. Then my third point, collaboration, is probably the single most important point that we have. And then finally, meeting the affected person where the person is.
So as we're going through that, if you guys can, please, let's take some notes. So these are the 5 things that we're going to go over today in terms of these 5 points. So be ready to, take some notes, think about some things in terms of how we might systemize it in what we do working with our particular populations. And we'll come back on the other side of it.
And then fifth.
Say it again.
Can you go back? I'm kind of writing those titles down.
Okay.
Since those are the 5 things we're going to do, I just want to have them all kind of listed in one place. Lab, meet, and okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, and anybody else, you want to take some time to kind of write those, maybe put some spaces in between them. You know what?
That's what I'm doing. Yep.
Let me do that. Maintain asset-based. And number 2 is ID, high risk. Three is collab. 4 is meet them where they are. 5, meaningful social service support. Okay, here we go.
My third point, collaboration, is probably the single most important. And so I adopted this to remind us that each of the people that we're caring for, we have to think of individually and the quality of their experience.
So the overall topic is patient-centered support.
I'm going to talk about 5 strategies. Next slide, please. Oh, good. There it is. No, sorry. I'm gonna talk about 5 strategies. The first is maintaining asset-based engagement, and I'm going to talk about using modified motivational interview tools that I'm sure are available to many of you and many of you already use. Then I'm going to talk about identifying people at high risk and articulating the risk. So in this part of the talk, I'm going to talk more about the articulation to the individual than the use of the tools to find them. Then my third point, collaboration, is probably the single most important point that we have. And then finally, meeting the affected person where the person is. And then fifth, offering meaningful social support. So next slide. When we talk about maintaining asset-based engagement, probably the single most valuable thing that we have to offer is authenticity to our patients, that they get to really feel that we are truly engaged with them. And because they're difficult patients, I think that it allows us to be able to articulate ways that they're difficult. So obviously we'll want to express empathy through reflective listening, avoid argument and direct confrontation, adjust to the person's resistance rather than opposing it, but be straightforward with how we see and what we see in front of us. Next slide, please. Then, when we talk about maintaining asset-based engagement, there are 3 arenas that we do not always include. The first is the issue of spirituality. For people with addictions, there is often a spiritual or extra-rational deficit that is contributing or is owned by their addiction, and exploring historic or current spirituality. By this I mean raising questions about whether a patient has engagement with traditional religious organizations. Many more of our patients have had strong religious engagement than we know because we often don't ask about it. And for many other of our patients, the experience of their familial spirituality, their grandmother's favorite saint, or their sense of an elder who practiced within a tradition that's not necessarily Christian, but their sense of closeness to that elder, often no longer alive, but to that elder's practice, brings another dimension of hope into our engagement. Then the next piece is that many of our most difficult patients really suffer from loss of purpose or meaning, and are really interested in being able to collaborate or produce something of value in the community. That may be a way that we encourage them to join groups or take up extra activities, but the desire to be altruistic can't really be underestimated in the population of the most hopeless and hard to reach. And then finally, we need to search for whatever areas of optimism they experience in their lives, relationships with other people, or specifically with animals. And we've had some success bringing animals into encounters as a way of allowing our members to experience hope again. And then, of course, connection with any creative endeavor and a history of creativity. Many of our members have had surprising experiences of success with putting up a painting or paintings in a shelter, or even self-publishing poetry. All of these become tools for us to see the whole person and for them to trust us more. Then, of course, the second piece is we need to identify people at high risk. And CMS reports of high opioid users, insurance claims data that tell us about
We're on mute, I think.
Mute, mute, mute.
I had a good segue into that too.
On mute.
So that's just number one. So let's unpack that a little bit. So as we're dealing with clients, and this is coming more from an SUD, substance abuse disorder standpoint, but substance abuse disorder and mental health, they go hand in hand. So exploring historical current spirituality, any comments about that? Or when I say comments, yes, but also ways you might think, well, how might we engage what would I do in my group to explore in a creative way historic or current spirituality? I'll
That
start.
that concept in itself is heavy
Yes, it is.
when it
Yes,
comes to clients, as far as just like the range. I really don't have a comment other than that right now. I have to kind of take that one after class and wrap my mind around that one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very thought provoking. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. It's interesting because it goes to the fact that they're people, whether they're SUD or mental health, where they're adults or some even kids, sometimes they have a sense of hopelessness. And being able to have some kind of tool, whether it be spirituality, historic or current, to kind of give them hope that you still can overcome. That would be one thing that I would think about in terms of, and then in a group setting or a yeah, type of group setting. If I'm looking at it, you know, what what do you when you hear the word God, what do you think? What comes to mind? Or when you hear what is your, I don't know. Yeah, that is interesting. Like what assets, because again, this is under the asset-based engagement. So we're saying what asset, we're identifying now what assets this individual is bringing to the table. So
So
I
with that,
go
think,
ahead.
okay, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna say that I think I was thinking when you asked, what do you think about when you say God? I know you didn't really finish it, but I think that it's situational. When you hear a different person mention or talk about God, I think you can kind of
Mhm.
read based off of how they say it or their expression, their body language. Like you can kind of see like that means something different to different people. So that's what came to mind when you started to mention it.
Mhm. And I like when they talk with the historic too. So what did your mom do? I'm thinking, Mike, if you're thinking from a kid standpoint, because you work primarily with young people, does your mom go to church, or did your mom what about your grandmother? Who meant something to you? My Meemaw. Okay.
Yeah.
Did she go to church? Because what we're trying to find is something they can link into that gives them a positive connection, right? And that was just one of the bullets that they start at when they look at this asset-based management, asset-based engagement framework. Like this is how, because we're engaging the client or the patient. So we're exploring, we're asking questions. So that's one. Um, avoid, let me see, explore historic, loss of purpose. And then the second one, investigate altruism. So what is it that just makes, what is it that they want to do good? How do they want to give back? Right? Any other comments on that? Any of the three, or even searching for areas of optimism. You know,
Seems like it's just a matter of developing again um, a collection of ways to kind of solicit that information, like Mike was saying with the body language, kind of, but developing a way to solicit information in all of these areas, and and like Mike was saying, to kind of look at their body language, how they respond, and you'll know what if you kind of probe them in all of these areas, you'll see which one they really,
yes.
through observation, you'll know which one kind of perks their interest. And from there, just having the finesse, so to speak, the clinical finesse to kind of drill down on that a little bit more and get to what really motivates them.
Because once you get that connection, that, hey, there are some good things about me. That's now we're building, because this is all also going toward building that rapport.
Right.
So they can feel comfortable in your space. Yep. That's good. Anybody else? Okay. Let's keep going.
Extensive emergency department use for pain, and so-called doctor shoppers. We need very much to be able to say to our people how they're seen and how we're finding them. One of the things that I found very useful, this linguistic tip at the bottom of the slide, is not to talk about behavior that puts people at risk for overdose. We know that many people who have overdosed don't see themselves as people who have overdosed, but instead that we talk about bad reactions, opioid safety, or accidental overdose. Next slide, please. And we need to be very open that prescription monitoring programs mean that every time they request opioids, everyone is going to know everywhere they have gotten opioids previously, unless they're in a methadone addiction program, because those opioid treatment programs do not show up on the PMP. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of collaboration, obviously, I doubt that I have to suggest to this audience that we use all human sources we can to try to find people that we're reaching out to. Service provider.
Now, just in this section here, this is really where your journal might come in handy, or some note-taking device, because as you're going through, as you're putting together this kind of a profile of this particular client, or in cases of our groups of clients, being able to kind of know this information and have it somewhat at our fingertips, so we can also enter it into the EHR later is important. So keep that in mind as we go through this part.
But point of contact, but there's another source that we often don't necessarily engage with, and that is family. Many more of our patients have some relationship to family than we expect. This can be a little tricky. We have to assess for the safety of engaging any other family member, particularly when you're thinking about possibility of intimate partner violence or other kinds of family toxicity. But also, many of our patients have networks of kinfolk or other people who are engaged in their lives who will be helpful to us as we try to get people into care and hold them in care. Then, next slide, please. When we talk about meeting the affected person where the person is, the first way we're talking about that, and I believe that this sculpture of two homeless people kind of captures both my kinfolk idea and the notion of us going out to where people are, is that mobile teams that can meet people where they actually are living are invaluable. But meeting the affected person where they are also means thinking about trauma-informed care, thinking about what's going on with them culturally, and acknowledging both the social stigma and the right to refuse care, and coming back to people who have refused care, still acknowledging their right to refuse care. So I'm just going to talk about two examples of from this slide. The first is obvious to me because it's geographic. Next slide, please. But if we draw on principles of trauma-informed care, and in my experience, probably more than 90% of the women I see have had some experience of trauma. If you are opioid addicted and female, even if you didn't have an experience of trauma before you became opioid addicted, it's very difficult for you to have carried on without having some experience of trauma. So what does it mean for us to think about trauma-informed care? And here I want to say as our chief of psychiatry says here often, thinking about trauma-informed care is a lens that gives us a greater understanding, tolerance, and interest in the context of a person's life. Trauma-informed care does not mean that we don't hold people accountable, because when we fail to hold our members accountable, we fail to believe they can change. But it means that some of the most frustrating and irritating aspects of our encounters can be processed differently by us. So I'm only going to talk about the 5 guiding principles that SAMHSA has put out for us, first of which is safety. At the beginning of anybody dealing with their trauma is that they need to feel that they have some safe space to do it. But it also means safety for us as providers, that we don't take risks in circumstances that are unsafe. The next is what I called authenticity at the beginning of this brief talk, and that is the trustworthiness and transparency that people can feel from us. And that's part of why we need to be able to say to someone, you're going to be characterized as a doctor shopper because this is what the PMP does. And that's where we're starting, because this is what's happening in this time. The next principles are peer support. This is one of the primary ways that we encourage people to use 12-step meetings, for example, by saying that our patients deserve the support of other people who've been through them. Collaboration. Nobody can do this by themselves, neither our members nor our workers. And then trying to enhance empowerment and voice for our patients. And then finally, in the same way, holding on to a lens that includes looking at cultural, historical, and gender issues as they play out in our patients' lives. Next slide, please.
Real quick, how could we summarize really when they're talking about meeting the affected person where they are? And we talked about the principles of safety, trustworthiness, peer support, collaboration, empowerment, and cultural, historical, and gender issues. What is that? How would you define that or categorize that? I got a word in my brain for this. Not a word, a phrase. Looking at life from their point of view, walking around in their shoes.
I was thinking maybe more like holistic or the whole person.
Looking at the whole person. Yep. Yep.
Empathy. Oh, you going to empathy, right?
Empathy. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And like when they say the whole person, meeting them where they are is basically like, I don't know, maybe it's like negative statement, but it's like their baggage, like just
Yeah.
what they're carrying, what weight they
Yep.
have, like, and like she said, is it historical? Is it gender? Is it cultural? Is it, everything?
This is like meeting that person. You said meeting where they are. Like, and they might be a hot mess at that point.
Right.
I remember a kid. Now again, I remember I had a kid, a teenage boy. He wanted to be a girl. He was a girl boy. And the first time I met him, flamboyant. How about that? And sometimes that just bothers me. I just know I come to the table with that kind of baggage. Like, sit down, sit your hot tail down, right? No, and after a while, this kid, I got to know this kid. This kid was very detail oriented. He liked the shock value. But once you get past that and begin to see like where he's from and what he's went through, you're like, oh, I understand this. I understand it. Now, do I agree with all of his choices? Probably not. But I understand him. And after a while, he felt safe around me, and I felt safe around him to let him be who he was within those parameters. And it was something. It was something. And he turned out to be one of my best, like, because we have students in class. You always got that helper person. And it's typically, you just got a kid that just wants to stay and help. And and you kind of do that for the benefit of the student. Well, yeah, it was for the benefit of him. But after a while, he benefited me because he was very organized and he helped to keep me organized. And so I think about that. And these
So he added some value.
Here.
He had some value in your group.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying, they had to have a purpose.
Yeah.
And so he began to have a purpose in that safe space.
Yep. Yep. And we had a conversation, and you know what? We were able to have a conversation because being that flamboyant, you open yourself up to some things. And so he was talking. He had come to class one day. He's like, "I got beat up. I got in a fight on the bus or whatever." I said, "Well, did you get beat up?" He was like, "No, I gave some of them the business." I'm like, "Okay, all right, cool." I said, "Now, why would they even do that or whatever?" And he was like, he said, and he was just being him in his words. And I said, "Well, in here is a safe place, but when you go out there, people don't see it that way sometimes. So you have to be mindful of when you come across like this. This is what you might get, and you might now. Well, I shouldn't have to change. Well, maybe you shouldn't. I'm just saying." And so we had some good dialogue, and later on, not that day, of course, but later on toward the end of the school year, it was like he would understand, like, okay, when I go out and about, I might have to pipe it down a bit. I might have to. I can't. Maybe I shouldn't be if I don't want to draw that negative attention to me. And so, but he came to that conclusion, and I just think about that.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
I got a question for you. So when we work with children and just people in general, just whatever, economic background, education, whatever, sexuality, religion, we think about our own biases, right? So do you think yours are taught mostly? Just everybody here, just do you feel like you were taught how you feel about others, or did you learn it at school? Did you learn it at home? Did you just TV, the world? Like, where do we get our biases from?
That's a good question. I think, to be honest, I think mine come from my and I wouldn't say biases. It's about my values and my beliefs. I kind of undid everything and put everything back together myself. As opposed to taking everything as it was given to me. So a lot of the way I see the world at this point, just personally as an individual, is based on my value system as I've determined. But this is a very murky ground now because you get into pushing what you may feel in your experience on someone. This is where it gets very, very, and I don't mean dicey in a negative sense, but just where our clinical expertise has to really come into play. Mm-hmm. Because, for example, Mr. Peterson, that young man could have continued. He would have been well within his quote unquote human rights to continue to push on that. Why do I have to change?
Right. Absolutely.
He would have been well within his right. And you may have a certain belief and I may have a certain belief, but at that point that could have taken on more, So, and I'm not saying the student is right or I'm not saying I'm not talking about right or wrong, but those are the type of issues in this world that we will have to navigate as strongly as we may feel, but still keep our clinical objectivity. That's heavy.
Well said. Yeah. But I think coming under the lens of safety, in that situation, because that's what you're saying is so right. It's like, it's just, and then at the end of the day, the ball is in your court.
Okay, I'm doing this for the sake of the discussion.
Okay.
Well, okay, it may be safe for me physically not to do this, and I'm really not. I'm just doing this for the sake of the discussion. But it's safe for me okay, it's safe for me physically to do this, but it's not safe emotionally because I'm not being myself.
Okay.
Mm.
And you know what? You know what I would do in that situation? I would go back to my clinical director during my supervision, and we would talk about this situation and
Right.
say, we see this kid every week, right? Potentially, right? We see him every week. How would I go back? You know, and we would talk about how I might go back to help to make sure that the response is more well-rounded. Because out of the 5 or out of the 6 categories or the 6 dimensions on this trauma-informed care, I was only addressing one of them.
Right.
So,
right.
and that's the benefit of it. So as we go through this, we'll still have weekly supervisions where we bring these situations back to the table and we talk about them. Mm-hmm. And our clinical director, our LIS, our LICDC people, our LSWs, you know, and us as well, we'll have this conversation. So, and it works similar to this. Like we'll put it out on the table and we'll say, look, here's the way I handled that. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk through it. And then, okay, and this is what you might want to do to go back to, I don't want to say make it right, but to make it a more well-rounded response. Because quite frankly, and then also knowing too, your personnel, like your clinical personnel, some, you know, in terms of the emotional part of it, I would probably say that I'm not as strong on the emotional stuff, the emotional side of things. And so knowing that about me, I'm like, I would say, well, let me bring this to the table so I can come back to my team, my cohort, and to say, what did I miss? And be open to the fact that I probably am weak, not probably, I'm weaker on the emotional side of how to
Support.
address issues and support. Right.
So I just want to say that, like, we had a kid in our group home who was wearing dresses, and he was, you know, under attack because the kids felt like, you know, how can you wear a dress? I don't like him, whatever, or him, her, he, she. So I think one of the things the lady said here too, you had to be accountable. So again, in our group, in our setting, you know, we can never let them think about how we feel, like how will we personally. That's why I asked, like, were you guys raised that way? Like, was it brought up from your family dynamics? Did you learn some things in school? So, you know, just being around your peers. So to me, when I say holding that child accountable, like if you were addressed to school, you may be attacked. Somebody may not like that decision that you're making, but you have the right to make that decision to wear a dress wherever you want to, however you want to dress, but just be mindful, be prepared. Like Peterson said, when a kid got back, how did you fight back? like, did you win? Did you lose? You know, but again, kids pick up how we feel too. So we just have to make sure, and adults, we just have to make sure that we're not pushing our agenda.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, to answer that question though, I think the first question about, you know, where it comes from, I think it's all of those things that you mentioned. You know, I don't think we just have a bias off of one black and white thing. I think it's just your whole experience, what you were taught, all of those in one. But with me, like working in a school with kids, I I always like try to teach them about consequences. Like you make the choices, you're gonna make choices your whole life, but you don't get to choose the consequences. And I think, you know, that was represented in, you know, the story that you shared. Like, you know, you could be flamboyant, you could be hard, you know, there's a consequence to both sides. You know, somebody may be offended either way. So you have to decide, you know, what that means to you, and if you need to adjust. You know, part of life, you know, is adjusting. I can't go to work any type of way, you know, and expect people to accept it all the time. So I think that's, like I said, again, that's from a kid's context that you know, that I speak about it. But like they have to learn, like you make choices your whole life, but you know, you don't get to choose the consequences.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we'll keep going here.
And then, of course, this culturogram, which comes from SAMHSA's tip 59, suggests the range of ways to think about context. Next slide, please. Obviously, one of the best ways for us to be able to engage with people, if we're going to be trustworthy and transparent, is to offer meaningful resources. Most often, this is through our outreach staff, which includes outreach workers, recovery coaches, case coordinators, which I know is the largest number of people listening, and care partners. And then next slide, please. Among those meaningful resources, I'm listing examples of services that we can offer, but I'm also, each time we engage across a service gives us a chance to bring the same kinds of
Before she goes on, so if you guys want to take a screenshot of this,
Yes, that's a great.
and as you guys are looking in as you guys are creating your journal, write these categories down. Maybe I would have probably maybe one for each page, maybe at the top of each page, because you will have these issues, if not all of them, some of them, and then knowing who to call.
Toya is that person in our department that really helps with a lot of these things here.
We do. We have a few people that really help with that. But what we want to be able to do is also empower you all to have some of those, because what will happen is you may call for example, you may have a high school kid that needs a car seat, or whatever. But you make a call and you may make a contact at that particular office. You may speak to Jana at AAA. I'm just using that as an example. I don't really know. But so it's not just the phone number to, here's the number to crisis care, which sometimes it is, a lot of times it is. Maybe 50 to 60% of the times it is. But what we also want to do is with our success coaches, as you guys are running groups, is that it's good to be able to, if you can, over time, develop a relationship as someone at the food pantry. Develop
some of those things in our calendar too.
Right, exactly. But having those things at your fingertip, if you will, where you can go to it and use it. Oh, wrong side. Is very helpful. And actually, we would expect you all. That's one of the expectations, that you will also build your own service support directory for your own self.
Mm-hmm. And you should probably, reach out to these people that you're going to work with in the contact, like at the food banks or something. You should have a contact person that you talk to. For those type of, like the furniture donation. They do a lot of that stuff at the Y too, where they actually help them right there on site.
Yeah.
And this is what we do now.
This is what we do. This is a part of, this is because, again, being able to offer these to me, this is where the rubber meets the road. Being able to offer meaningful resources to your clients, your patients.
What is that last
member-centered?
Say it again.
Because what is the last one there on the bullets? It says something. What's the last one there? It's like the words on my screen. It's something resources.
Go back.
Hearing aid resources. That's what it says.
Hearing aid resources. Yep.
Okay.
Of member-centered respect. When we help someone find a food pantry or go with them because they have difficulty transporting the food back to their house, and we treat them with respect and we engage people in the food pantry with respect, we help to break some of the stigma that makes it so hard for people to come and see us. Finally, next slide, please. We have to take care of one another. The patients we're trying to reach out to have been highly stigmatized and often react to any kindness with bitterness and anger. We know that actually getting people into treatment works. And we know that hopelessness is our worst enemy in this. But we have to also remember that we take care of one another. That's the other most critical arena of collaboration. None of us does this for no reason. So all of us carry vulnerabilities that can become enhanced by our engagement with difficult patients, complex members, unless we care particularly for ourselves. Thank you very much for
this last part, and this is I know we're going a little bit over, but this last part is what engages people. And so again, this is really, again, rubber meets the road. So I want to make sure we get this in before we close out for today.
The challenge, as Barbara suggested, is to think about what is it that engages people. The idea of many of these folks, I think as you heard earlier, do not particularly see themselves as having this is their primary problem. So the outreach touch is really, our experience, more effective when it is focused on things that are important to the person rather than things that are important to us. And at some point, we hope those things converge, but they may not. So we're looking for hooks, if you will, that have a tangible and identifiable benefit from the person's point of view. That's often something like, I need help with my gas bill, not I need help with my diabetes. That diabetes might come later. It's related to the person's goals. Everyone has goals. They may not be the goals you would have, but people have, even in the worst of their times, may have goals related to their families or their children or their jobs or their partners or a variety of other social issues. And things that are really fairly quick turn and impact. So for many people, probably most people, the idea of slowing the progression of one's diabetes is a very, very long-term goal, and it doesn't have enough quick feedback to make it better. So finding things that both have long-term and short-term impacts, particularly so I can see that if I, the consumer, have made an effort, that I get some payback for it. So it might be my gas is turned on, or it might be I filled both my prescriptions. So those kind of the general themes of engaging folks are really on these three areas. Another slide, please. So we have something people use well, analytic techniques to identify priorities of people. It's fed by a variety of data information into one large data warehouse that the health plan operates. Include the ADT feed you see at the bottom left of your screen is a daily feed from our hospitals.
Okay, that's more the technical side. I just wanted to talk about really that last part of what engages people. And what engages people is what's important to them. And I think the example he uses somebody that, suffering from diabetes and hasn't been taking their meds, but what's important to them right now is they get their lights turned back on. Well, guess what? As the case manager / QMHS, guess what we need to work on? Getting
their lights on, helping them, or the mental health side of it too.
Getting them lights turned on.
Yep.
How might we do that? Somebody beside Miss Toya, how might we do that? Man, I need to get my lights on. How would you walk me through that?
Oh, Toya.
Toya.
No, you would send them to possibly the job center or the resource center for like a PIP. Refer them, and you can actually pull it up under this community book that we have too. Are you meaning like?
I should have said not Miss Murray either, but that's fine. Yeah, I got the answer booklet. But yeah,
we got a community resource book too that has all that stuff in there.
Peterson, what about you?
In my current position, I work with, we have those issues related to people's plans sometime. Okay. What we have here is a program where, I would refer them directly to the company first. They have programs for individuals in the winter, for lights and gas, If you're able just to put down something, a very, very minimal amount, and I actually refer my people now, my clients I deal with now, I refer them to it because I actually use it. It's a way to kind of keep your bill level, throughout these months right now where it's getting really cold. So that's normally my first go-to. Um, so anyway, I would refer them directly to the company. All you have to do is say it's a $75 plan, and they kind of know what you're talking about. They get $75 or $50, whatever you can do from you, and they adjust it to where your bill is solid. They get you turned back on for the winter, and you just have a steady bill throughout the winter months. And so that's my first. That's what's in my book, in my playbook for utility for the lights and gas.
Did you
All
say
right.
the name of your program up there?
Oh no, I'm not dealing with the clients I'll be dealing with once we get done with this. I'm in the healthcare field
So our
currently.
program is called PIP down here. I'm quite
Oh,
sure
oh
it's
yeah.
different everywhere.
Okay. Oh, you mean that program? Yeah. Well, we have Pip and Wick, but there's
Okay,
something
okay.
that the Illuminating Company, which is our light company here, is a program that they have, and Enbridge Gas. They have an individual program sponsored by the company itself.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And they you do have to put something down, but once you do that, then your bill is reduced to that lowered amount, and you just pay a little bit more in the summer where you may not be using as much lights and gas.
I think
Yeah,
some
we
of our
have that
programs
here
are like,
too.
yep, I was about to say that too.
Yeah, we do. It's called the 1/3 or the 1/6 plan. It
Okay,
gets you, like you
okay,
say,
yeah,
regulated. Yes.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I go to so I guess to add to that, I don't have anything where they can,
Okay, well, that's not.
excuse me.
I think that was somebody's background. That's all.
What'd
Oh,
you say? I'm
okay.
sorry.
Oh no, I was trying to see what you all said.
So
Well, my answer was I didn't have. We don't. I'm not familiar, and I haven't gone that. Maybe I just haven't dug enough. But I'm not familiar with a program that will actually just say, "Hey, we're gonna. You don't have to pay anything. We'll get it turned back on." I don't know. I don't know if we. Yeah, I don't know how to refer someone to something like that. But if you have a minimal amount down there, they'll get you taken care of.
Oh yeah. See, that's what's in our resource book. We have like certain churches and, like she said, community action. They'll
Okay.
they'll they'll waive the cost and get you back to where you can start making a monthly
Okay.
payment.
Got it. Okay. And then maybe at that point, then they can get on that program, right?
Yeah, right. That's it. Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
So those are the types of things that you would add to your playbook, that you would add to your playbook journal, whatever, where you can, you got a section on heat or utility assistance and how those things work together. Because what I heard is there are 2 or 3 things that you could use. You could kind of put them together and make a nice little cocktail to be able to get somebody help throughout the whole winter, so they have utility security.
Yep.
Because once they feel secure, then the therapeutic things can begin to happen. No therapeutic progress can be made if I'm not feeling safe and secure, because I'm in fight or flight mode, survival mode. My amygdala is triggered. I have no creativity. There's no healing that can take place in me emotionally right now. And on top of that, my stomach is my internals are constantly secreting adrenaline, all the negative, all of the fight or flight hormones that are good in a short burst, but are toxic over long periods of time. So anywho, I think we have enough to, the class work is going to be in the class comments section. It won't be an assignment. It's going to be in the class comment. Describe 10 takeaways from this training video and how this impact on how you interact with these populations. I'm also going to put, what are some things what are some tools? What are, no, not name, just, yeah. Name 3 to 5 tools you can use as a result of what you learned, of what we learned. Is that straightforward, guys? And then just all you gotta do is just post in the comments. Okay.
You said 10 takeaways?
10 takeaways, and which would include some tools that, because I want, be able to like some tools. So one of the things we talked about, for example, we already talked about was the utility assistant. That's a tool. We talked about engagement. We talked about, not there's when you talk about engaging, it's about what their goals are. We talked about safety.
Safe space.
Yeah, we talked about creating a safe place in terms of meeting them where they are. Under that, we also talked about under meeting them where they are, safety, trustworthiness, and transparency. We talked about peer support and then collaboration. So those are those 6 things under that number 4. And then
one more thing I want to say is everybody should have a purpose and a meaning and something of value. I think that is so important.
Yeah, we have to find that, and that goes back to the asset-based approach when we're doing that motivational interviewing, right? Expressing empathy through reflective listening, avoiding being argumentative. We're not this is not the time to try to pass any kind of moral judgment or disagree with people. Like, hey, because and it may be a crazy thought, crazy concept, and like, hey man, I think it's okay to kill dogs. Man, okay. What makes you think that? In a non-judgmental way, because yeah. So, and what we're going to talk more about, we're going to learn more about motivational interviewing. And then it said adjust to the person's resistance. Yeah. And then finding areas of optimism. Like, what are they excited about? What are they looking forward to? Even though in the depths of their mess and their depravity, we have the opportunity to give them a hand up. I don't know if y'all remember that first video when we had with the cartoons where the person was in the hole and I think it was the elephant that came down or whatever and turned on the light. Where we're not trying to lift them up, we're coming down there with them and turning on the light. So thank you guys. This is so enriching, not just, hopefully not for you, just for me as well. Like, I really appreciate being able to, learn together about these things. Any closing comments before we take off? Okay. All right. Well, we have our assignment. So again, feel free to start it today, while it's fresh on your mind. Those 10 takeaways from the video, and then 3 to 5 tools that you can use in working with your groups and your clients. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Have a good one.